Hello and welcome to the ThreeWill podcast. This is your host, Danny Ryan, and I'm here with Tommy Ryan. How's it going, Tommy?
It's going well, Danny.
Good. We're on number.
It's nice to be in Hawaii. The nice balmy 70-degree days. Are we in Hawaii?
No.
We're in Georgia. In January.
We're not in
70.
Hawaii. You're mistaken, my friend. I wish we were in Hawaii. We should have our annual getaway in Hawaii or something for planning for the next year. How's that sound?
Run it by JM.
I'm sure he'll approve that. I'm sure he'll be just fine with that. So we're on number 3 of 3 of 3 here. And this week, wanted to talk to you about the third C, which is commitment. Most people are afraid of commitment. We're not afraid of commitment, are we?
No.
No. Well,
We wouldn't be here today doing this thing called ThreeWill if
Yes.
it wasn't about commitment.
Absolutely. So we talked about the first week was about control, and then the second week was about choice, and this third week is about commitment. There is, I think, along with this, you can't talk about commitment and not talk about trust. I think that's a key part of this as well, which is to do what we do, we have to build up trust with the clients that we're working with. And just to get us kicked off here, I'll talk about, the first part of working with a new client is a couple of conversations that we have about what they're trying to do. And during that time, I like to make little small, say I'm going to do little small things and then come through on those small things. Because I think that's how trust is built up. I say, if I say I'm going to send you an email by the end of this day, then I follow up with an email by the end of the day.
Right.
And I think this is where commitment comes into play. It's we often say around here, making and keeping our commitments, and those small commitments are even as important as the big commitments.
Yeah, and I think that there's two parts, making and keeping. It's hard to make commitments, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to kind of lay low and not have to get the attention from people through a commitment. But then when you make a commitment, keeping the commitment is hard also. We're in a very busy world that there's plenty of distractions, and you can get overloaded with commitments. So it's that balance too. To be able to make a commitment, you need to know that you can keep the commitment before you make it, and that's not always easy.
Absolutely. I know one of the things that I've worked through experience-wise is, and I know we have to do this delivery on projects as well, which is when you make a commitment, there's a part of you that says, "Oh, I'll get it to you by the end of the day today, or by the end of the day, tomorrow." And how you sometimes overcommit, to sort of saying you're trying to get something, you want to get something back to somebody, but then other things might come up. And I've sort of learned through the years to yes, make a commitment, but also along with that, realize that other things come up that could get in my way of meeting that commitment.
Right. Yeah. A lot of times when it comes to me personally, if I look at making a commitment, in your gut, you says, okay, I can do this by the end of the day. And then I make the commitment for the end of the next day because of that, of reality of you're not sometimes in control of those urgent, important things that pop on your radar that you have to give space for. And if you say, well, I'm not going to do that, and that's the only time it can occur, then you end up being in a bad position, really, at the end of the day. So you have to give that space to allow for the things to come in that you can't control.
This reminds me of, we're big Covey fans. This reminds me of the emotional bank account where you're trying to, build up that relationship with someone else where you're making these deposits. And I think making and keeping commitments is one way of making deposits into people's emotional bank accounts.
Yeah, and also along the lines of Covey, that visual that he does where he talks about big rocks, really it comes from first things first. So you have those big rocks, those very important commitments that you make, and then you have the pebbles, and then you have the sand, and then you have the water. That if you're not putting those commitments out there, you're not putting the big rocks out there, you will definitely get the sand and the water to fill up your day. And so that's, the challenge of being conscious about making good commitments. And that shows up so much in the work that we do when we're looking at making commitments at the level of an estimate. So we're, it's that fine balance of we're looking at what is it going to take to do this, try to keep it as lean as possible, but also give margin for things happen and things are not perfect, and every organization gets work done differently. And we have to be aware of that and not put our stakeholders in a bad position where they can't complete things because it's under budgeted. And that's, it is a little bit of an art. I think at the end of the day, it's through conversations and trust that you find what is that middle ground of what's something that's not too high of an estimate but not too low. Because kind of common sense, you go too high and it can't be done. And it's always, quote, easy to do a high estimate and really protect yourself. And all the hard work is going into, okay, what are smart assumptions we can make that we can still hit that commitment, meet the business need, and be wise with resources, with funding and people.
I know I've recently heard on one of the projects, and I think it was one of the Jive migrations where the client said, well, I didn't have to worry about the ThreeWill stuff because you guys just took care of it for me. So it was almost like he was in his mind. He knew there were different parts of this project. Right. And he knew the part that we were responsible for, we were going to get done.
Yeah, you'd love to hear that. I mean, that's music to your ears when you hear that, because that's the effect that we want to have, that your life is complicated and we should be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
You got it right that time.
I had to say that slowly because I was
listening
listening
to the bloopers. You'll understand why he was very, very particular and slowed down there and made sure you hit it, Tommy.
Because that's that is very important of being part of the solution. Because at the end of the day, we don't need more problems. That's easy. That happens all the time, and so being committed to our customers' problems and, as we've said before, treating them as they're our own, really caring about that. It shows, and I think it's contagious, and people want to see that over and over again. So we look at starting projects, and this can be difficult at times, starting projects at a level that we can make a commitment and keep it. And so with a new customer, sometimes that's a smaller project, and sometimes that's not easy to find as your first engagement. So what is surprising to, I think, some of our customers is we're not looking for the $1 million starting project. We're looking for that $50K project. So it allows us time to establish a relationship and allow us to make bigger commitments down the road.
I think the way that Scrum is set up with it every 2 weeks having that checkpoint, it's almost like a checkpoint against the commitments that you made for that period of time.
That's right. Yep.
I mean, it's sort of built into what you're doing, which is really, we're not going to get very far if you say I'm going to get this, these things done during the first sprint, and they're either done or not done by the end of that sprint. So you can't go on without making and keeping commitments.
Yes. Yeah. So it's definitely part of our philosophy and why Scrum rose to the top when we looked at standardizing on a methodology back in, I think, 2006. That Scrum was that lightweight way of showing that you can make and keep commitments.
If I turn the table on this and say, do we need clients that make and keep commitments? I think that's just as true, because
it is.
We've had experiences where we're doing things. If they were easy projects, they would be done internally, right?
That's right.
But these are usually very complex projects, and we can do as much as we can on our side to do things right. But if we're not working, if the client isn't making and keeping commitments, we can fail just as easily.
We can, and so it does come to that trust, and there's a little bit of faith going into your project that the other side is caring about being successful too. because as hard as you can try, as much as you can do on a project, if you don't have a committed customer, it will fail.
So this is where often, especially if they're maybe larger engagements or things that I see are require an action plan, where we'll, sort of early on, I'll try to put together, these are the steps that we need to take together to get to this, end state. And as part of that action plan, I'll have, I love the things that I have to do because I know they're going to get done and they're up to me to get them done. But as part of that action plan too, typically there's maybe 2 or 3 things that I'm relying on the client to get done by a certain time. And I'm paying attention to see, because if they're not able to do it early on in the process, when the project comes around, it's going to take longer. It's going to be more expensive for us to deliver. And so it's almost like I'm getting some clues to say, are they going to be a good client or not? Are we going to be able to pull this off successfully together?
Yeah, and it's hard to know where that breaking point is,
Yeah.
because you also see a client that has a hard time making commitments. Sometimes it is due to them being overloaded or them not having a decision framework to work within. Where we can help them with that, but at the end of the day, we do get into situations where we have to, in a sense, punt and say, "Gosh, this company needs this work done. They're probably going to outsource it, but based on everything that we're seeing in the sales process and the relationship building, it's set up for failure."
Yeah.
And so that's hard. As a small business, you're always looking for that next opportunity, and to turn something away because of that, it's a hard decision to make.
It is a difficult decision, especially when you've invested so much time and energy for that, and just to be able to say, what, this is not going to work out. I think it sets us up so that it's only right to do that for the delivery team, because if you see those warning signs early on, you probably it's a pretty good forecast of what's going to happen in the future.
Right. Yep. And we, what we're end up doing at times is to scale back on the commitment. So at least you get a test cycle, and you reduce the risk of the impact of failure, because sometimes that failure, you can crawl out of it, but there's a cost. There's, say, a lot of non-billable time, a lot of management time to figure it out and get it done. But then you have to step back and reassess to say, does this make business sense now? Should we continue to do these types of projects or work with this particular customer, knowing what we know after that first project?
I love working with you, Tommy, because part of this is I know you're committed. You are, when you say you're going to do something, you do it, and it makes, as our partnership goes, it just makes things so much easier to work together when you know that the other side is going to come through for you. So I appreciate that, Tommy.
Well, thanks, Danny. And I am human.
Yes, you are.
I think there's a lot of times I fall flat on that, but I think it's. We both care and want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Yep.
And it's not just for our customers; it's for the people that work at ThreeWill.
Yep.
And so, I think at the end of the day, commitment really makes a difference, and I think we see that in the organization as a whole. Mm-hmm. It is part of the culture. It's not just one person. I think we learn from each other here at ThreeWill about what it is to be committed to your responsibilities.
And I think a part of this is, as I look at ThreeWill and over the last 15 or so odd years, is we really do, because we're so committed to our clients, we, it takes a lot of our brain power, our willpower to focus in on that. And we've been more intentional about focusing in on how can we help our clients versus, all about ThreeWill growing and how fast can we grow. And it's all, it's about us and let's do this. And, I think a part of what we've built as a great small company has been because of this willingness to be totally committed to clients and to projects that we're on.
Yeah. The nice thing about it is a small privately owned company is that we can focus on the customer and realize that if we focus on the customer, we'll be okay. And at the end of the day, we don't need to have metrics of we've got to grow by this much each year. We're looking at being committed to the people that work at ThreeWill to make sure they have the stability that they need to support their families and get a good income to be paid for what they do well. And then at the end of the day, if there is growth out of that, and we enjoy that growth, and it makes it a richer environment at ThreeWill, we embrace that. Mm-hmm. But if it's we're the same size from this year to the next year, it's not seen as a failure. It's seen as we continued to do what we committed to do for the year, which is serve the customers.
Yep. Awesome. I missed the socks. We didn't talk about socks.
Yeah, I prepared for this one.
You were
I went all the way to Clemson to get the national championship socks.
Oh, my goodness. Do they have national champion
no,
somewhere
they
on this thing?
But there's a lot of paw on that.
There is. Okay, I'll take a picture of that and also take a picture of mine. These are the ones. These are my Christmas socks that I got from Molly. Okay. They're actually, it's a little Boston Terrier with a little Christmas cap on. So
nice.
I know it's not Christmas, but it's what I got for Christmas, and so I'll wear it after Christmas.
Good.
But congratulations, Clemson.
Oh, awesome win. Love it.
I'm so glad you guys pulled through. At the end there, I was like, it was what a wonderful game though.
Yeah.
And to see what was named Renfro, what he was able to do he was a walk-on, was that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was the last person to get a walk-on scholarship, the last pick. It's amazing. And he's only a sophomore.
And I love
listening. He's just a humble. He doesn't look like a football player. He just looks like a regular Joe that you don't think he could play football.
I love that Dabo Swinney wears his relationship with God on his sleeve, and I also love how much he emphasizes family. I think you guys are going, you're going to go, people are going to look at this, and those recruits that you're going after, the parents are going to look at this, and they're going to see Clemson as a family, and what a great sort of metaphor model to set up as an organization.
Yeah, I think he's creating a legacy by the way he's approaching it. It's not it's long-term thinking.
If I could have afforded to go to Clemson, I might have gone to Clemson. But you used up all the money, you bastard.
Hey, talk to your dad about that.
Hey, Dad, Mom, I love you guys, but you
you
spent so much money on Tommy and Deanna private school. Really? No,
the struggles in life are good. You went to Georgia Tech. That's not half
Georgia
bad.
Tech is not half bad. It's a wonderful school to go to, but we were.
Well, Bobby had to go to the military. He couldn't even go to school.
Nice. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate this time. Thank you, Tommy, for taking the time to do this every week. It's great stuff. I really enjoyed this conversation today about commitment. If you could, feel free to leave if you're looking at the blog post, leave a comment at the bottom. It would be wonderful to hear back from folks. And thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.